February 25th, 2017. Could the clerk please take the roll?
Chairperson McNamara.
Here.
Vice Chair Canario.
Here.
Vice Chair Ackerman. Here. Representative Azzanaro.
Here.
Representative Bennett. Here. Representative Casamero.
Here.
Representative Donovan.
Here.
Representative Handy.
Here.
Representative Lancia.
Here.
Representative Maldonado.
Here.
Representative Perez. Here. Representative Phillips.
Present.
Representative Ranglin Vassal.
Here.
Representative Roberts. And Representative Walsh. Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to hear three bills and consider one. The bill that we are going to consider is House Bill 5017 by Representative O'Grady. This bill was heard last week. It is a House resolution that extends the reporting period and expiration dates of the Special Legislative Commission to study and make recommendations for the protection and providing effective care for vulnerable populations and state-funded home care programs. It is a resolution that extends the study commission program to April 20th, 2017, and it expires May 23rd, 2017. Is there any discussion or questions relating to this?
I'll make a motion to pass.
Second. There are no questions. A motion has been made by Representative Canario, second by Representative Maldonado. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The resolution passes. Thank you very much. Tonight we are going to hear three bills. Before we hear those bills, which means the sponsors, in this case it's Representative Lombardi night, Representative Lombardi will explain the legislation, then we will hear from witnesses and ask those witnesses questions. But before we do, we are going to take a procedural vote to hold these bills for further study. What does this mean? It means that once we have heard the testimony on these bills, the bill will be kept alive within the bar of the committee so that we can work on it and consider it during the next meeting So I am going to make a motion to hold the following bills: 5045, 5048, and 5049 for hold for further study. Second by Representative Phillips. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Those bills will be held for further study. The first bill we are going to consider is by Representative Lombardi of Providence, an act relating to education, school committee, and superintendents. Transportation services will be provided to students who live 2 or more miles from the school, and we welcome Representative Lombardi. Welcome, Representative Lombardi. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I know it's you say it's my night, but I can tell you it's never my night. I've never had a good night, so let's just for the record, let's get this record straight, okay? So anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair. You're always very accommodating, and I truly appreciate that. And you know, in many ways, this is. As you know, I've testified on these bills, and I've proposed them for several years now. That's my teaching background. This is where my passion is. My passion was to be a teacher. Obviously, I thought I could be a good teacher, but I flunked, and I became a lawyer, so I guess I really flunked. But this bill really, and sorry, Mr. Chairman, just as a question, will I be able to testify on all three, or do you want to do one at a time? Obviously, whatever. It's up to you guys.
Yeah, why don't we do one at a time?
That's fine.
Thank you.
That's no problem. And what does this legislation do? Well, this came out of a concern that happened in Providence several years ago, where it was 3 miles, and had a constituent of mine contact me that her daughter had to walk from a little off Broadway, Almy Street, to Juanita Sanchez High School, and it was like, you know, and it was as the crow flies. But our children are not crows. They don't go from point A to point B by, 1 point. No. There's things like buildings and other obstacles in the way, streets and so on and so forth. But more importantly, and we had walked from one of the children's houses on the north end of the city to a classical high school. And, you have to walk into traffic, around snow piles, trees obstructing sidewalks, into the street, across a freeway or highway ingress and egresses, and it just made no sense. And can you imagine if you're going to walk 3 miles or 2 miles, 2.5 miles, and it's pouring rain out, and here you are, 7:30 in the morning, and you're soaked from head to toe. Now, maybe some would be okay because they were commando, but some of us are not. But, I make that as a joke, but I mean that very, very seriously, Irizy. So, some of our children go to school hungry. Now they're going to be wet. And you want to talk about an environment that's certainly not conducive to learning. For me, it makes no sense. Quite frankly, 2 miles is, and this may only affect a few communities, I believe, but the point is we really shouldn't have any limit. There should be 0. Our children should be within walking distance of all their schools. To me, that's a common sense thing. So we need to make, and the other thing, 7:30 in the morning, walking from, one part of the city to the other. Some of these neighborhoods are not safe. We know what's in our neighborhoods, and some of the stuff that's in our neighborhoods, not that we want it. If some of the other neighbors want it, they can have it. But, it's everything from shooting galleries, drugs, armed robberies, perverts, you name it. It exists, especially in the poorer neighborhoods. That's my concern. It's not acceptable. If we want our children to succeed, they need to be near their school and in the schools. And if they're going to be productive at school, they need a safe way to get there in the morning and to leave at night. Don't forget, this is a trip that's done twice a day. And this is about our children. I urge you to please support this bill. To me, it's a common sense bill, and it really doesn't hurt anybody. And it protects our most important asset. And those are our children who are 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. Let me tell you something. I was a pretty tough kid growing up. It's tough to walk around in these neighborhoods at 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, especially if you're a young lady. Because that was the young lady's house that we walked from the north end to classical. I mean, she was about this high. So I'll endeavor to explain if I can, if there are any questions.
Are there any questions for, yes, Representative Maldonado?
Thank you,
Representative Casimiro.
Thank you, Representative. I just have one small question. Would this apply to both students going to public and private school?
Well, public schools for sure, but if it's going to be private, that's fine. Public for sure, though.
Private?
Private's okay, too.
Representative Casimiro.
Thank you, Representative. I spent a lot of time leading the walking school bus, specifically in South Providence, and I've seen the conditions that...
Excuse me, Representative. He was calling you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I spent a lot of time leading the walking school bus in South Providence, and I've led these kids in, temperatures below 0, and when there's snow and on the sidewalks and dangerous conditions. Is the 2 miles a financial consideration, or...
No.
Where is it 2 miles or 1 mile? I mean, where did the 2 miles come from?
It was 3 miles, and
right.
Try to cut it down. But again, if you heard me testify, I like to make it 0.
Right. So, but I guess it's a financial impact.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no but when you're talking, say Providence, for example, you're talking about $400 million. If you can't find $1 million for the public health, safety, and welfare of our children, then we better just forget it.
Thank you.
Representative Ranglin-Vassell.
I teach in Providence, and I see students all the time who cannot meet the 8:30 or deadline when school begins, or they cannot be there for breakfast because of the 2 mile the 2.5. It was about 3, I believe, previously. So the impact is great. And we have to support kids if we really want to eliminate those disparities and make the playing field level. I think this is a reasonable bill.
All I can say is amen and
Hallelujah. That's what you said.
But you know what? It's from the representative's ears, lips to God's ears. I mean, I think that states it well. No one should have to learn in that kind of a situation.
Thank you.
It's also a safety issue as
Yes,
well,
I said
that
that,
you
yes.
articulated earlier. We want to make sure, that our kids are getting to school safely, and it's a win-win for all.
Thank you. Before we go on, Representative Roberts would like to be marked here. She's come in and in the affirmative for the bills to hold for further study and the resolution to extend the reporting date for foster care. Okay? Representative Ackerman.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to point out that it's not just an issue of the urban schools out in suburbia. The districts I represent, that also is an issue, and again, having to do with safety. And in the case I know of Cumberland, where I live, and my kids had to walk in the streets when the snow was piled up, and it became a great concern for some of the people in my neighborhood. So I can totally relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, and thank you. I appreciate those comments, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is a statewide issue, a statewide bill. Again, it's about the public health, safety, and welfare of our children. And, the average person, adult, walks 1 mile in 15 minutes. So you're talking a half hour. Inclement weather, it's probably 45. Twice a day, that's 90 minutes that you're walking on the road. You're alone. You're maybe defenseless. And, unfortunately, that we have to talk about those kinds of things. That's what we need to be concerned about. And again, I'd rather go to school and take it from someone who was on welfare, had no parents, had to go to, went to school hungry. It's not a healthy situation. It really isn't. When you get, hunger pains in your stomach and you're soaked and, you really don't have any direction at home. You don't speak English in the household. I've been through all that, lived it. I think it made me a better person. But you know what? I see how it affected me, and if we can eliminate that for a measly $1 million, $2 million, whatever that cost may be, again, what's the price tag you want to put on your children? And that's the question you have to ask yourself.
Representative Perez.
Actually, the question will be, do you consider this bill only for be a seasonal bill?
For what, I'm sorry, sir?
For seasons?
Seasonal.
Seasonal?
Yeah, just winter.
Just winter?
No. I think.
Yeah, because I just hear people talking about the.
Oh yeah, no. I think if it could rain every day for a month. No, I say no. It's an entire year, entire school year. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Representative Lombardi. You can stay right there, and we can call up at this time Representative Andy Andrade, Rhode Island Department of Education.
Are they within elbow room, or should I move over? Which
well, I think, I think in this particular case, we might have to split you up.
I'm sorry.
Welcome, Mr. Andre. Please proceed.
Chairman, members of the committee. As usual, Rep. Lombardi makes great points, and I'm not going to go, pro or con on this. He raises a lot of good points. The one thing I will say is that traditionally this has been a local decision, local school committees. And the one thing I would say, it has been a local process that does take the unique situations of that district. So those that closest to the kids know their situation maybe should make that decision. But if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, one of the things I wanted to do, because you mentioned, Rep. Casimiro, about transportation. And one of the things that we've been doing at the Department of Education has really worked on transportation efficiencies to try and help districts in that cost area. We have a statewide transportation system that has saved a lot of money. And the General Assembly has been very generous in your categorical funding for transportation. Last year, we added another $2 million to that fund, and so you've done your part. One of the things that I wanted to mention to me that's very exciting is that we've I'm sure you've seen in Massachusetts the vans that drive back and forth for transportation. We've been looking at that as well. And we found that the law already exists that we can have 8 passenger vans in the state for transportation purposes, and DMV is the body that dictates what should be in those vans to make them ready and safe for transportation for students. So Ocean State, and part of our statewide transportation contract, we've been talking to the vendors about this, and Ocean State has come to the table, and they actually brought 4 used vans from their fleet countrywide, and they went to DMV to find out what exactly they need to retrofit these vans to be ready. And at one point, I think that it was kind of onerous. There were stop arms and all these very expensive things that was the guidelines at the time. But right now, we're hearing that they're not necessary, and they'll have the lights up top and they'll have the sign, much more in tune to what Massachusetts has. And the bottom line is, we're very hopeful that there can be some savings there, and also. There's a need. As you know, there's a lot of mobility with career and tech now, and there are several examples, quite frankly, of students traveling from point A to one student going from point A to point B in a large full-scale bus. It doesn't make any sense to me. So these are the things that we're looking at. We're going to find out what exactly needs to be in those vans. We're going to let people know, so that hopefully in the local contracts they can talk to their vendors and perhaps utilize some savings. And our superintendents have been talking to Commissioner Wagner about this, and I know the governor as well. And we're going to try and do everything we can to have some efficiencies. And one last thing that I forgot to mention is that. They have a tough time finding drivers for buses because they need I always get these confused, I think a CDL license, but they have plenty of people that would want to drive these vans. You don't need a CDL, you need a chauffeur's license, but there's still a lot of training involved, and so that's another component of this that might make it more advantageous. So, it's more or less a pilot program right now, but we're hoping that this spreads because we think that there's a need, especially with older kids, CTE, and those types of student transportation.
Yeah, and Mr. Andrade, when I was teaching at Shea High School in Pawtucket, we used to sell and have discounted tokens for RIPTA, and the city did not supply busing. It provided tokens for students, and as an administrator of my own high school, I always had tokens available for students that we would purchase. Does RIPTA currently have a program for discounted?
It's my understanding, Mr. Chairman, that Providence does that. I think Providence has a program for those students that are outside that limit, which I think went from 3. I'm hearing different things. It went from 3 miles to 2.5, John? Yep. 2.5 miles. And those that fall outside that are eligible for RIPTA passes, as I understand it. And at a discount, I believe at a discounted rate. I'm not sure about that.
Representative Lancia?
Good evening.
Sure.
Not to get off the topic or get far afield here, but we're talking about safety, and one of my colleagues, Bobby Natalillo, has put in a bill last year, and again this year, we heard it last year, regarding seat belts on buses. And talking about safety, as they're retrofitting these vans, is that any type of discussion at all, a discussion point as far as having seat belts in them?
I'm sure that the vans are going to have safety. And to your point about Rep. Natalillo bill, that has been a bill that has been around for a long time. And quite frankly, when we talked to the experts, even the national experts, for a long time they were against seatbelts, and now that the tide is changing on that, I'm hearing that there's a different perspective on that. So that might.
I just, when you specifically said retrofitting those, I just was curious if that was something that was as part of the recommended
certainly
equipment.
Seatbelts would be part of a van.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Canario.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Andrade, I just wanted to point something out, which I'm sure you're very much familiar with. But in my district, I've noticed more and more taxi cabs with school bus signs on them, transporting students. And if there's only like 2 students in a particular area, a taxi will bring them, because they actually have a school bus sign that flaps up on its hood. And I've noticed that for the last year in my district.
Really?
And they're actually using cabs from Massachusetts.
We passed legislation about 5 years ago to enable school departments to have these. They're like station wagons. They have to have some signage, which is removable, and there are requirements.
Right. There's actually
that was a bill.
That's right. Exactly.
That could be an option if you have a small area where kids may need to walk that few miles. And
Rep. Lombardi is bringing up this. This is an important issue that we have to have discussion about. This is an important issue. There are a lot of things involved here, and we can come up with some ideas that'll help districts and help kids.
Excellent. Yes. Representative Bennett.
Is more for the representative. Would this apply to charter schools? I know you said something about private schools, but would this apply to charter schools?
Again, I think, Representative, when it comes to our children, it doesn't matter. I think we need to do what we have to do to protect our children. And I'm glad to hear, not to get far afield of your question, that RIPTA is trying to best utilize what they have available. And I'm glad to see they're talking about consolidation and doing what they have to do. That to me is so refreshing because, in many instances, people feel that some of these buses are not utilized to the best of getting the best bang for the buck. And I'm so glad to hear it. But I think any child should be have access. This isn't about charter schools versus public schools. I'm a big public school person, but I think this is about the public health, safety, and welfare of a child, whether the child be public, private, charter, or self-taught.
Rep. Bennett, the answer to that I believe would be the charter schools are they're public schools, so they would if that was the state law that they would have to adhere to that as well. Okay.
Representative Casimiro. No, I'm done. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Andrade and Representative Lombardi. You can stay right there.
Do I have to, Mr. Chairman?
Well, you can't. No, you don't. That concludes the hearing on 5045. The next bill we're going to hear is 5048 by Representative Lombardi relating to professional development. It provides for professional development opportunities relating to reading disabilities.
Yes.
2 hours of instructional training. This is a subject that the veteran members of the committee are very familiar with, and I know it's one that you're very passionate about. With that, again, welcome, Representative Lombardi. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Yes, it is something, and I think like most of the people, everyone on this committee, I think we're always concerned about the safety, welfare, and the learning ability of our children. Oftentimes there are barriers that occur, and you don't know what they are. Maybe a language barrier, could be something going on at home. But this is, again, trying to be proactive and trying to deal with a situation that what this act would do is provide for professional development opportunities relating to reading disabilities and would require 2 hours of professional development instruction pertaining to reading disabilities for certain general education teachers. This is crucial for our children with learning disabilities because of our teachers are trained in the most current and up-to-date teaching techniques regarding these disabilities. It would allow our children to have the best possible education regardless of their respective disabilities. And I think, as you know, this comes out as a result of the discussion about dyslexia. But none of this works unless we have the intestinal fortitude to put money behind it. So we talk about it. We talk about it. We need to recognize that there's, something going on. Whatever, I was reading last night that 15 to 20% of the children may have dyslexia. That number may be even higher. So if we don't recognize that and identify that disability, how are we going to do something about it? How's that child going to be defined as they get older? What are they going to be called? A criminal? Stupid? Because they're far from it. They're very talented. And in many instances, the parents don't realize because the parents, there may be a single family, single parent. There may be parents that are working 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their head. So the parent may have little time to recognize someone's inability to speak, read, whatever it may be. So somebody has to do it. And the instructors, the teachers in loco parentis, I don't know if they still utilize that term. But, you know, the teacher stands in the place of the parent, not to issue out corporal punishment, but to help recognize that. You know, I do it on the bench when I sit on the bench once every 3 weeks. Sometimes a situation comes, you know, in front of me, and you recognize that there may be a disability. Maybe the person can't read. Maybe the person can't understand. So teachers should be able to recognize that. Now, how are they going to do that? Representative Phillips asked me about, you know, so-and-so is a phys ed teacher. I say, you know, I thought about this answer because I think I gave him an improper answer. I think all instructors should be able to recognize it, whatever it may be. You know, someone could be acting out in the gymnasium. I used to do it. Showed a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustration, a lot of anger. And how did I do it? In the gym. It wasn't pretty. So I think you know, the cost is going to be about money again. And I say, what's the price tag you want to put on our children? Is it worth it? If they're not worth it, but let's put our money where our mouths are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And once again, I will attempt to answer the questions. I probably won't be able to, but I will try.
Now, it's interesting that you mentioned the phys ed connection, Representative Lombardi, because in the 70s there was a famous physiologist named Delicato who came out with a theory that for reading disabilities, that there was a perceptual, neurological, motor connection between reading and neurological development. And at one point in like the early 70s, children were going back through the phys ed teacher and occupational therapist and actually going through the straight stages of crawling. And many of these children never had reciprocal crawling. And at that time, it was considered kind of far out. Wouldn't you know, today, neurological patterning is coming back as a very, very accepted therapy. So there is a very strong connection to that physiological development and neurological development in the brain. So an excellent question. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for this witness? Representative Perez.
Yeah, the question is, who's going to pay for that? The state or the teachers? And who's going to give
The state. The school, the various school departments are going to have to pay for it. I don't think the teachers are going to pay for that individually. Well, yeah, not the teachers themselves. The various school departments.
Any further questions? Representative Ranklin Vassell, please.
A question for you. Thank you for bringing that up.
You're welcome.
I wanted to draw the distinction between, for you to draw the distinction, because the distinction between the language barrier and the reading disability, because those may be two different things. And also, as you move forward and as we move forward, to include the development, professional development instruction pertaining to reading disability for certain general education teacher. I just wanted to suggest that you could specify the teachers, because the English teachers and the reading specialists, they do have that training. So you referenced the PE teachers who may not have those training. And I think, it would be a win-win.
So,
and amen, Representative.
Yeah, for members of the committee, we have two other witnesses on this. One from the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Healthcare Professionals, and the other from the Department of Education. So if you have questions that may be relating to that or the history of this. Yes, Representative Phillips.
Maybe I did not answer the question
correctly.
Can I?
We'll go back to you.
Okay, good.
1 minute, please. Representative Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reading the bill here, Representative Lombardi, I see that you're ending at grade 3. Is there a reason why grade 3? Did you just arbitrarily pick it, or was it something that somebody had brought to you?
Yeah, it's something that somebody brought that, many of these issues have to be recognized by then, because in some instances they may be too late. So we want to get it early and often, so to speak. We need to recognize. But if it's something you want to raise it to grade 12, Fine with me. Again, this is going to be a funding. This is going to be a funding issue, Representative. And
so
again, who has the intestinal fortitude to do it from grade 3 or beyond?
Is this bill mainly to just find out if there's reading issues, or is this to also to help them through
identify and find a solution, whatever that solution may be?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. If Mr. Andrade and Mr. Parisi could both come up, and that's good. Representative Lombardi, stay right there in the middle. And
so
I know
I have good elbows. I have great elbows.
Yeah.
I have great elbows.
We have them surrounded.
I know that Your Honor, if there's any conflict here, you're in a perfect position.
Mr. Chairman, they said they're going to surround me. They don't know they're the ones that are surrounded. But that's
okay.
I don't know. Your story's about the gym. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Mr. Andrade from the Rhode Island Department of Education, please proceed and welcome again.
Okay. First of all, again, this issue is before us because of the advocacy of Rep. Lombardi and also Rep. O'Brien. Okay, Rep. O'Brien, this is a very big issue for him as well. And if you remember, last year we passed legislation because of your advocacy and his, to do much of the same thing that we're doing here, which is professional development. And there were two things that the bill actually did. One was to ask us to include specific strategies for dyslexia in the literacy plan, which we are currently doing. We're working on that as we speak. So that's one very important area. The second one, again, was to have professional development. But as you said, Rep. Lombardi, there was no money involved attached to it. I think at the time we had talked about having some money in the budget to do it. There wasn't. So one of the things that we've done, working with this community and an advisory committee, RIDE decided to do a survey of the districts. We've got very good feedback from the districts on what the need is, because we didn't really have a very good idea of what the need is. How many are trained? How many are not? So right now we're in the process of gathering that information and trying to come up with something, a fiscal note, if you will, to have an idea of what we think it would cost to do this the right way. So I've talked to Rep. Lombardi, I've talked to Rep. O'Brien. When we get this together, we're going to actually work with them and advocate them to hopefully put something in the budget to do this right. So we'll finally have some good data that we can say, look, this is what districts need, and it's timely, it's important, and let's do it. And we'll hope that we'll get your support as well, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
And for members of the committee, prior to this, dyslexia was not considered a diagnosed disability, but due to the advocacy of both Representative O'Brien and Representative Lombardi, this legislation that was enacted last year did and called for plans and interventions for this. So that was a huge, huge step. Are there any questions for Representative Andrade? For Mr. Andrade. Ready to put you out on the floor, Andy. Mr. Parisi from the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Healthcare Professionals. Welcome. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman and committee members. It's good to be back at this committee where I spend a lot of time, and I look forward to working with the new members on the committee. The Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals represents about half the teachers in the state of Rhode Island. And as Andy Andrade mentioned, when this issue came up last year, if you look at Representative Lombardi's bill, the first section, A, was something that we supported, a lot of advocates supported, and I think that was well captured in the legislation that was enacted last year. We as a union are strong believers in professional development. We have a small staff at the state federation, but one of them is Dr. Colleen Callahan, her full-time job is dedicated to teacher training, teacher professional development for our members around the state. It's something my union believes in, and we actually think there is more that could be done in the area of statewide coordination. I think one of the areas where we need to go is not only have RIDE develop some expertise that they offer to school districts, but sometimes that expertise resides in the school districts themselves, where we may have teachers in one district who have a really good program and some good experience and an ability to teach their colleagues. We need to create opportunities for that to happen as well. So in terms of promoting professional development. We supported the legislation that last year, and that portion of this bill is something we're just invested in. I don't know that it's necessary based on what's already been enacted. Our objection to this bill, and we do object to the second portion, which is the required professional development. Quite frankly, public school teachers don't want the General Assembly to dictate, professional development, for them. We actually spend a decent amount of time at the collective bargaining table trying to have teachers, get teachers to have a greater voice in the training they're already getting. Because, quite honestly, there's a lot of professional development going on in all of our public school districts right now. It's structured differently in different schools and different districts. Some districts have days where they dedicate it. Some require, a certain number of hours per school year of training and professional development. And other districts provide time within the workday where they embed professional development. So it's handled different ways, and that means if you have a state law passing saying you need 2 hours of this or 3 hours of that, that really in our view, it runs afoul of what teachers want, which is to, have some voice on what training is going on in their workplaces. So we object to that mandate in the section portion of this bill, but we fully embrace and hope there's greater work on expanding awareness of dyslexia to do the identification piece as well as the treatment piece as well. There's a lot of work that the state can do on that. So we oppose that portion of the bill, but we're glad to speak on the issue generally, and we appreciate the advocacy of Representative Lombardi on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Parisi. Are there any questions for these? Representative Azzanaro.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony. I sit here mostly listening. And it seems strange to me that I know teachers, kindergarten, first, second, third grade, fourth, fifth grade, they must see that there is a problem with a particular child. Why is it necessary to, and I'm going back probably to say, no child left behind? Do we not take really good care of the child we know has a problem, but because there's no child left behind, we're just going to let him or her continue on through school, and then when they get up into the middle school and high school, they can't read or they can't write?
Yeah.
Why is there a problem of not doing something immediately when I know teachers are not dumb people? They're very intelligent, and they can see a problem. Mm-hmm. Why isn't that problem being taken care of?
Well, I think if I can start off with that, one of the things that, because you're right, that it needs to be done immediately, right from pre-K. And as you know, the governor has a third grade reading initiative to try and to make sure that these kids are at grade level in reading by the third grade. So there's a lot of work being done there. This particular bill, though, in terms of research-based strategies, not all teachers have, and I'm not an expert, but Orton Gillingham and Wilson, for instance, are two protocols that are being used, and that some teachers have that ability and expertise and background, and some don't. So that's an example. So professional development could help in that area. So again, I'm not an expert, but those are some thoughts that I have on that. But you're right that it needs to be done. Once you get past the third, fourth, and fifth grade, it gets much more difficult. So that's why I think the governor wanted to focus on third grade, which I think most in the field agrees that that's the kind of the line of demarcation of when you really need to go after a kid in terms of reading. So I don't know if that answers your question, Rep, but.
Everything it does, and everything in life is. Years ago, you had a family doctor. Mm-hmm. You went to him for everything. If you had a heart attack, if you had appendicitis, if you had gas, he took care of you.
Right.
Today, everybody is a specialist, and it follows true with lawyers, teachers. No, I'm going after you, Representative Lovato, but true. Lawyers have their own specific jobs that they want to do, and teachers also. and doctors. Go right down the line. And I think that's one of the problems nowadays where it's not my problem because I'm a specialist in this field and I'm not a specialist in that field. You don't have to be a specialist. You just have to be a good person and someone intelligent that spots something that's wrong.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just want to respond. It's Lombardi, Representative Lombardo, but that's okay. You're not the first one in the House to call me that. I am going to move over to the Senate side, but then my brother may have something to say about that. Rhode Island doesn't have a provision for specialty in law, but the problem is, do you have the intestinal, not you, meaning in general, that when someone has a problem, are you willing to step up and do something about it? I do it on the bench when I have the robe on, but you know what? I'm way far afield. Let me give you an example of something that we did the other day. There was a 28-year-old woman in the back of the courtroom with a 2-year-old child in her arm. The child is sleeping. Just so happens there's 100 and some odd people in the courtroom. She's the last name to get called. The inspector comes over and says, that lady's homeless. She's sleeping in her car. She has a deal with a business that as long as she leaves 5:30 in the morning, as long as she won't get a ticket, because some knucklehead or chowderhead called the cops on her, she ends up getting a tag. Okay, so the question is, what are you going to do about it, Lombardi? You got a robe on. I'll tell you what we did about it. I didn't have to do it. The cops did it. They got her clothing. They got her toys. They got her housing. They got her gas for her car. They gave her food. But you know what? Everybody's afraid because everybody's litigious. Because you know what? You can't do this anymore. You can't say you got a nice coat on anymore. It's a different world out there, Representative. It really, really is. So the question is, if we identify it, what can we do about it without getting sued, without ruining our names, without ruining our reputations? So that's the way it goes. With me, I don't care. I'll do something about it. But you know what? I'm in the rare minority. So
I think we're waiting for the Judge Lombardi show. We're ready. I think we're ready. The public is ready.
It's a hit.
Mr. Parisi, do you have something to comment on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think teachers now more than ever are doing more differentiation, treating, kids, with their own needs in the same classroom, because we have much more complex classrooms than we used to have in terms of integrating kids with special needs and English language learners. But I think something like dyslexia is different. And I think what Andy was talking about earlier, certain things you would expect teachers to handle all kinds of issues and make things work out. But if we're talking about dyslexia specifically, there is a need for some specialist intervention. And I think, quite honestly, school districts don't offer a lot of programs once the students are identified. And more than identification, I think that's the real issue, and that's something we're going to have to tackle at some point in time.
Any further questions for these witnesses? Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 5048. The next bill that we're going to hear is by Representative Lombardi, 5049, an act relating to education curriculum. Directs the Council on Secondary and Elementary Education to recommend to the Commission the educational curriculum for students and career success in computer science. Sounds very similar to the governor's initiative right now taking place. And with that, the foresight of the author of this and the sponsor, Representative Lombardi. Please proceed.
Once again, I guess we had the the Oracle of Truth and the Oracle of Delphi to see this well in advance. But anyway, the purpose of this legislation will adequately prepare our state students for successful post-secondary education and careers within the rapidly growing computer science and information technology field. And in order to do this, we need recommendations and academic standards for computer science curriculums in our public schools. It has become very clear that the jobs of tomorrow and today are fueled by computer science proficiency, and in order for our children to be able to meet that demand, it is up to us to ensure that they have the proper training and education within these fields. This legislation is about giving our children the best possible opportunity to succeed when they enter the adult world by preparing them for the employment opportunities of the future. And the point of all this, Mr. Chair, and obviously you're getting familiar with the way I do things. I like to read some prepared comments, and then I'd like to speak extemporaneously and some of the experience that I've had certainly in Providence. And it just seems unfair when the children on the poorest side of town, and I'm going to talk about Providence, they don't have access to a smart board or a computer, or even their teachers. So 1 out of 10 children will have access to a computer. 1 out of 4 teachers will have access to a computer. And then on the more affluent side of a particular city or town, no names mentioned, it's just there's an unfairness there. There's an unfairness. And, we saw it just in my neighborhood where a certain administration made a decision to shut down a school in my side of the city, the West Broadway area, which is probably as close to the east side as you can possibly come. And $48 million was supposed to come to our school in my district, and it went to a school on the east side. And, not to pit the east side against the west side, but you know what? And you utilize the excuse that they were inundated with text messages and emails and phone calls and letters. Well, I'll tell you what, the people in the West Broadway area, there's no one better than that. And again, when you get children have access to smart boards and computers on one side of the city, so by the way, $48 million for their school, closing of our school. And then when our children went to, they were transferred to the school in Silver Lake, this is what there was the school superintendent at the time, school board members, and this is what was said. What are those kids doing in this neighborhood? And you know how many people spoke up? That's offensive. That's offensive. That should offend everybody in this room. Aren't all our kids the same? Yeah, maybe some more opportunities. But what about creating opportunities in those neighborhoods with those kids that have the most problems? You want to give us 60% of the problems? Give us 60% of the money. Don't give us 20% to take care of 60% of the problems. It's not that easy, I know that. But, having worked in the schools, having taught in the schools, having been a knucklehead in school, I can only tell you that, our schools, we have real good schools. Just afford us the same opportunity. Let our children have access to a computer. Let them have access to a smart board. And you know what? You may not have some of the situations that you have in the poorer communities in our state. Let's expose them to something proper. The kids, if a kid lives on Elm Grove Avenue versus Picasset Avenue or Charles Street or, wherever they're from, Manton Projects, Hartford Projects, let's afford them the same opportunity. Why not? Sorry, as you can see, I get very passionate about this stuff, and I know that many of you are too, but I think it's important but remember, let's put our money where our mouth is. We could talk about this all day.
So, a very important point, Representative Lombardi. In my previous school as an administrator, every student would take one virtual class.
Imagine that.
So this is an urban school where, and to Representative Maldonado's credit, after school, they would go to the Pawtucket Public Library for computer access at home. So important today for students, and especially in the urban area. And Representative Maldonado has championed that issue, and it is just so important, not only in school, but they have to have access at home or at the boys' club or someplace. Are there any questions for Representative Lombardi? Yes, Representative Maldonado.
Thank you, Representative. I just have one minor question. How has the response been from the state colleges and universities regarding this? Has there been any
Zero
response, just no comment?
No one's contacted me, and I've sponsored this bill, I think, 3 years in a row, 4 years.
Sounds.
So, and by the way, I used to teach in Central Falls. I taught at Notre Dame High School that many years ago. I don't want to say because it's much older than you. But you know what? It's great stuff. And these kids are great kids. They want to learn. They want to be challenged. But We got to level the playing field. You can't have these kids in the school system have access, and these teachers and these kids not having access. It makes no sense. You're creating a bad dichotomy. It's common sense to me, but what do I know about geography? Nothing.
And Mr. Andrade, welcome. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, it was a great segue when you talked about putting your money where your mouth is, because the governor has done this in computer science. You already mentioned it, Mr. Chairman, the computer science for Rhode Island program. When that was initiated last year,
would that be the Representative Lombardi program?
Absolutely. Well, it was spurred on by his enthusiasm and passion, no doubt about it. A couple of things that when I look back at the initial rollout of this plan, AP Computer Science, before the program started, was only offered in 9 public high schools. 1% of public high school students were currently enrolled in a computer science program. Last year, the initial year, the governor put $250,000 in the budget. She also did again this year to continue the program and expand it. I just found out that currently 186 out of 306 schools now have students being introduced to computer science, and that's just in 1 year. The partners that we have in this program are phenomenal. One of the things I would really suggest, if you get time, to look at the website, the CS401 website. They have some really good stuff that talks about all the partnerships, all the great things that are happening. And one of the things that I did, they have a cool visual that shows some of the programs in the different schools that are being offered. And I pulled one up. I looked at West Warwick Senior High School, okay? And I was amazed looking at their offerings. They have I'm just reading it. A URI Introduction to Computing, URI AP CS Principles, Intro to Computer Science, Computer Programming 1, Computer Programming 2. That's at West Warwick Senior High School. So we've moved from 1% to now where 186 schools have some form of computer science, access for students, and it's growing. This is a great thing. This is exciting. And you talk about, and rightly so, a curriculum for that. We have partnerships with Microsoft, with Brown, with URI, and they're helping develop some of this curriculum for teachers and for students. This is really good stuff. And again, you've been talking about this for a long time, and I think that it was a tremendous initiative from the governor and the General Assembly to support it and to fund it. So I think we're on the right track.
Representative Ranglin Vassell.
My question for you, sir, thank you. So we know it's available theoretically. Mm-hmm. My question is, do we have data to know that it's available in all of our schools, and how many of those schools actually have computers? So it's available theoretically, but how many kids are logged on and are actually working?
Well, that's a great point. And I'm reading from, in other words, initially when they had the press conference, they talked about 1% of public school students or high school students enrolled in a course. Now we're talking about 186, but we need to drill down. I know that you represent Providence. What's the access in Providence? We can find that out. So offline, Rep, I'll talk to you because I'm curious myself. Right. What schools do have, and where are we at with specific schools? And I know that there's been that Providence is totally on board, and I know that we want to get more and more kids involved. So let's take a look at that.
And also I do represent Providence, but I do represent all the children of Rhode Island.
Of course. So
we really want to make sure that we're talking about the core urban areas. There's right. Newport, there's Central Falls.
Absolutely.
There's Woonsocket. So although I do represent, I just wanted to make sure that it's available, but our kids actually sitting at the computers and do their work if they're sitting at them.
I think one of the things that I'm going to try and see if I can get, I don't know if we can, it'd be great to know which schools are we talking about and what is available in each one of those schools. Right. The graph that I talked about, it has these cool little balloons where you can press onto the balloon and it shows the school based on the map, and it shows you the courses being offered in that school. So I don't think it's totally up to date because there's more and more courses being offered, but I bet we can get you, maybe the committee, what schools are using it or have it available and what the courses are. I think that would be a nice report to get, and I'll see what I can do about that. I would be curious myself.
Thank you. Representative Donovan?
Yes. Do we know how many schools have computer labs, and is that a requirement? We can have a curriculum, but if there's no computer in front of the children, then what is the point?
Right.
So, how do schools access or get the money to buy the computers to put in front of the children so that they can learn?
Yeah, it was interesting when we were talking about some of the testing doing in the schools on computers, the disparity from different districts on what they had. So that is definitely a disparity in some districts in terms of computers. I think it's getting better, but certainly that's a concern. There's no question.
I walked into a school in my district, and every third grader in that school had a laptop. I don't know where that came from. Mm-hmm. They have a computer lab. They're taking the Park exams on computers. There's a schedule for that. There is the school librarian is teaching computer science to all those elementary students. But I'm sure that's not statewide.
I'm very hopeful that this is really mushrooming, this program, this computer science program. I'm hearing anecdotally there's a lot of excitement in the schools about it with the kids. So I'm hopeful that that's going to spur interest and a priority in local budgets to have more money for computers. It's certainly needed for today's economy and today's jobs. So,
Representative Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Andrade, you had made the comment of access for high school students. What is the access for the elementary?
It is K to 12.
It's K through 12.
It is K through 12.
All right, you made the comment about high school students specifically, so I was just wondering, what is the access for the elementary? Because we know as educators, and I'm married to an educator, so we need to make sure that we get the kids younger. Yeah. Because once they get proficient at it, they're going to be more and more active in that. So
I was mentioning high school students. I was reading off of our initial press release, but to me that was an astonishing piece of information that 1% of public high school students at the time, before this started, were currently enrolled in a computer science program. But you're right, this is K to 12, and we have over 300 schools, and out of those, I think it's 306, 186, more than half, are now at least kids are getting introduced to it and to see what it's all about, and that's going to keep mushrooming. In 1 year, we went from that to 186. The goal is to have every single school in this state have access, maybe not equal access. Certainly that's not the case, but at least give them a taste of what it is so that can spur them on and excite them to a point where who knows, in 3 to 5 years, it might be completely different. Everyone might have, as you said, Rep, maybe every student might have a laptop. Who knows?
Yeah, I really think it should be equal access.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Representative Lombardi.
Again, Representative Reagan-Vassell speaks, we must be talking to one another. That's the point. Those most in need it the most and should get it first. It should be equal. So it can't be that half the schools in the state have it and others don't. And I'm willing to bet that the poorer schools in the poorer neighborhoods are the ones that don't have it. And that's the unfairness of this. This is a regular thing. These children have computers are like we do whatever, widgets, whatever we did when we were kids. But it's a new world out there. And if they don't have access to the smart boards and the computer, and the teachers have to have access to this, and they have to be trained in that. But that's another issue. But again, it's not if there's 300 how many schools?
306, I think.
If there's 306 and only 186, that I'm going to look at it, the bottle is half empty.
Right. Well, the goal is to get.
It should, yeah, but the thing, my point is, we shouldn't have to wait. We should not have to wait.
Representative Perez.
Equal right to have, like you say, not just a little access.
Well, there's a lot more work to be done. But
we all get it or nobody get it.
Yeah, no, I'm very encouraged by the 1 year's results. So, and I'm going to try and see if I can get something from you on.
Oh, that'd be great. We'll make sure that members of the committee gets it. We'd like an update on that program. Any further questions? Thank you. That concludes House Bill 5049, and at this time, I would like to, starting from this row, just thank Representative Lancia for hanging in with us tonight, and those of you who haven't seen the Warwick Beacon of the Cranston Herald. There's a very good picture of Representative Lancia on the front page with Representative Vella Wilkinson, so doing some great work for the veterans. Representative Perez, thank you very much. Always very interesting comments. My name, and representing Providence and some of Johnston. Right. My name is Joe McNamara, representing District 19 in Warwick and Cranston. To my right, thank you, Representative Canario. And Representative Canario always has these, you have three, is it Portsmouth, Tiverton,
Little Compton.
and Little Compton. So once we get outside of the suburban areas, these representatives cover a lot of territory. And Representative Casimiro, I think you have the longest drive tonight, all the way down to just North Kingston, right? And Exeter. And once you get out to Exeter and Rhode Island, we know you have to pack a lunch because that's way out in the woods. And on first row, we have Representative Donovan, who comes all the way across the bay from Bristol, the great town of Bristol, across the bridge. And during the nice weather, she takes the Representative Donovan yacht right into Providence, and that's great. And Representative Roberts, thank you very much. And Representative Roberts has, I was Coventry and West Greenwich, Representative Roberts? Coventry, and then out into the woods at West Greenwich, which can be also quite a drive, almost a small snack for Rhode Islanders to get there. Representative Ranglin Vassal, thank you very much. And you represent Providence and part of North Providence as well? Just Providence, okay. So thank you very much. And Representative Phillips is just Woonsocket. No.
Parts of Cumberland.
And parts of Cumberland. Wow. So you have an urban and kind of a suburban community. Very interesting. Representative Maldonado, thank you very much. From the great city of Central Falls. And my colleague in Warwick, Representative David Bennett, RN. And I always mention that because it's so important and valuable to us to have someone with those professional credentials for the clinical issues that we face. So thank you, Representative Bennett. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you. The House Committee on Health Education is adjourned. Thank you, and have a nice evening.